Thanks for staying with us. Now, the clock is ticking for millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses that expire soon. The Health Department says 8.5 million Pfizer vaccines will have to be destroyed by the end of October. According to our World In data, the country's fully vaccinated population stands at 33% as of this month. For more on this, we're joined now by the Director for Affordable Medicines at the National Health Department, Khadija Jamaloodien. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. I think it's a very worrying aspect that millions of vaccines are going to be destroyed by the end of October. Could you just clarify how many vaccines, if you know, and whether or not these vaccines' lifespans have been extended to the end of December? Because I know that the Department of Health had indicated so. Is it still the end of October?
So thank you, Heidi. No, our regulator, SAPRA, has approved another 3-month shelf life extension. So there will be vaccines that will be expiring at the end of December, and then another batch that will be expiring until by the end of January.
Okay. Do we know how many are going to be expiring?
Okay, so current stock on hand with an expiry of 31 December, it's about 3.9 million doses. And with the expiry of 31 Jan, it's 4.7 million doses.
Okay, so that's a lot that we are looking at. Mm-hmm. I want to first ask you, before I speak about government's vaccine rollout program, I want to ask you, for anybody watching that possibly wants to go get vaccinated, when you hear of a vaccine lifespan being extended by another 3 months, you think to yourself, how can a lifespan be extended by another 3 months? What am I going to be putting into my body? Could you just elaborate how that process works?
Okay, all right. So when vaccines are manufactured, they have what's known as the manufacturer's shelf life, right? So that means that the 6 months that we originally had when the vaccines arrived in South Africa came from the manufacturer. But the manufacturer does ongoing stability studies to make sure that the vaccine continues to be safe and effective. And that data gets generated by the manufacturers using studies. And that data gets submitted to our regulator called the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. When they review the data, they then decide whether or not the data is sufficient evidence to support the continued use of that vaccine. So, we have experts who look at the data and then make the recommendation to extend the shelf life. I must just inform you also that this doesn't just happen in South Africa. So the vaccine extension, the shelf life extension, the data is reviewed by the European regulatory authorities as well as the FDA, and South Africa then also looks at the same data.
Okay, I ask you this question because I'm sure there are many South Africans that are slightly worried about this expiry date now being pushed back to December. So can you just reassure those who are wanting to go get vaccinated, if they haven't been vaccinated as yet, or to go get a booster, that those vaccines are safe to use?
100%. Those vaccines are safe and effective to use. In fact, we are expecting further shelf life extensions. And this is because the manufacturer does ongoing studies on the safety and efficacy of their vaccines. So it's not the end. And one must understand, especially with the Pfizer vaccine, because it was a new vaccine, we knew very little about it. There wasn't sufficient time to generate that long-term safety and efficacy data that we would have had, well, the benefit of having if it was a normal situation. So we were under pressure to introduce vaccines as quickly as possible. So the data for the shelf life wasn't as long as we would have liked. But as time goes on, that data is getting generated, and the public can be assured that there is sufficient evidence to support the shelf life extension. As the Department of Health, we would not release any vaccines into the system that would not be safe and effective for our population.
Okay, you speak about other vaccines that could possibly have their expiry or lifespan extended. Do we know how much stock we have of COVID-19 vaccines, and how many others are at, I wouldn't want to use the risk, but how many others could have their lifespan extended?
So currently we're only looking at the Pfizer vaccine because that's the vaccine that is more, more pressing in terms of getting shelf life extension for that. And also because, it came with a 6-month shelf life to start with. But The other vaccines, the J&J vaccine, I'll just tell you now quickly, I'm just looking at my data. So that vaccine will only be expiring in June next year. So there's still about 6 months on their 24-month shelf life that they had from the beginning.
Okay, it seems as though we have quite a lot of stock of the COVID-19 vaccines, and I think the next question would be whether or not you believe whether it's the National Health Department or government as a whole failed when it came to its COVID-19 vaccine program, because initially there was such a desperation and demand for these COVID-19 vaccines when everybody was trying to get their hands on it, because we knew that there was evidence that it was saving lives and would prevent severe COVID-19 infection. And it's almost as though South Africa was very late in getting these vaccines. Looking at where we are with our vaccine program, we are 33% of the population fully vaccinated. Would you say that you failed as the National Health Department to have a proper vaccine program to get people to understand the importance of being vaccinated against COVID-19?
I think what we're seeing is not unusual to South Africa. And I think if you look at the statistics, just on the Pfizer vaccines themselves, we've administered over 28.5 million doses already. In our population that is most at risk, that means people over 65 years of age, we've vaccinated 75% of that particular patient group. So I think if you look at statistics, one can put it in any way one wants to, tell a story. But I think the good news story is our most at-risk population has been vaccinated at 75%. We've administered over 28.5 million jabs of our Pfizer vaccine. In total, we've administered over 37 million doses of the vaccine, including the J&J. So, obviously, we would like to get more people to come in and be vaccinated. There are ongoing demand generation strategies that are being implemented, and it is not a unique phenomenon to South Africa, where you see that the demand for vaccine waning. I think given those statistics, I don't think we've done too badly as a country.
Do you think that we could do better, though? I know that possibly
Absolutely.
Millions have not received their booster vaccine. And you know what, I'm going to be quite frank. I think a lot of people say that because our COVID-19 infection rate is very low, and when there is some kind of infection, it's not as severe as before as the heart of this pandemic. But would you say that more should be done, not only because these vaccines are expiring, but because we need to make sure that people are protected, because we just don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19.
Absolutely. You are 100% right again, Heidi. And the problem is that, the vaccine efficacy, the immune protection that you get from vaccination wanes over time. So especially the high-risk populations who are eligible for their booster doses. And, everybody else, let's get our vaccination done. Let's get the booster doses in. And let's make sure that we continue to sanitize, keep the social distancing, etc., because it's not over yet.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. That was the Director for Affordable Medicines at the National Health Department, Khadija Jamaloodien.